It was called the Great War, a war unlike any before it, where modern technology collided with old-world strategies, and the result was catastrophe. From the mud of the trenches to the skies filled with biplanes, World War I reshaped nations, toppled empires, and left scars that still define our world today. The story begins in the summer of 1914. Europe was a continent on edge, a network of alliances and rivalries holding the great powers together and threatening to pull them apart. Then, in Sarajevo, a single act changed everything. Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, was assassinated. In the aftermath, diplomacy collapsed. Austria declared war on Serbia. Russia mobilized to defend its ally. Germany declared war on Russia, and soon on France. Britain followed. Within weeks, much of the world was at war. Millions of men were swept into battle. They marched with enthusiasm, believing the war would be over by Christmas. Instead, they found themselves in a nightmare. The Western Front, stretching from the North Sea to Switzerland, quickly froze into a stalemate. Trenches, dug deep into the earth, became home for soldiers for months, even years. Life in the trenches was brutal. Mud, lice, constant shelling, and the ever-present fear of attack. Between the lines lay no man's land, a deadly expanse of barbed wire and craters, where any attempt to advance meant near certain death. This was industrial war on a new scale. Machine guns cut down waves of soldiers in seconds. Artillery pounded positions day and night. Poison gas drifted silently over the fields, burning lungs and blinding eyes. And yet, despite the horrors, soldiers fought on. At battles like Verdun and the Somme, hundreds of thousands fell, for gains measured in yards. War had become a war of attrition. Who could endure the longest? Who could sacrifice the most? But this was not only Europe's war, it was a global conflict. Colonial troops from Africa, India, and Asia were drawn into the fighting. In the Middle East, Arab fighters rose against Ottoman rule. In Gallipoli, Allied forces tried and failed to break through to Constantinople. On the seas, German U-boats hunted Allied shipping, bringing the war to civilians far from the front, even in distant corners of the globe. From East Africa to the Pacific Islands, the shadow of the Great War loomed. By 1917, exhaustion was everywhere. Russia, torn apart by revolution, withdrew from the conflict. But a new power entered. The United States. American troops, fresh and determined, tipped the balance. Technology, too, began to shift the tide. Tanks rolled across the battlefield, breaking through defenses once thought impenetrable. Airplanes, once used only for scouting, now carried bombs and machine guns, taking the war into the skies. On the home front, entire societies were mobilized. Factories turned out weapons and shells. Women stepped into roles left vacant by men, working in munitions plants and on the land. Propaganda filled the streets, urging sacrifice and unity. But beneath the surface, discontent grew. Hunger, loss, and despair gnawed at morale. Finally, in the autumn of 1918, the end approached. Germany, exhausted and facing collapse, sought an armistice. On November 11th, at the 11th hour, the guns fell silent. Soldiers emerged from their trenches into a stunned silence. The war was over, but the cost was staggering. More than 16 million dead, countless more wounded. Whole cities shattered, economies drained. Peace brought little comfort. The Treaty of Versailles withdrew the map of Europe, stripping Germany of territory and imposing harsh reparations. Empires fell. Austro-Hungarian, Ottoman, Russian, German. In their place, new nations emerged, fragile and uncertain. Many believed the sacrifices had been in vain. Far from securing lasting peace, the war had planted the seeds of future conflict. World War I was called the war to end all wars, but it was not. It was, instead, the beginning of a turbulent century. A century of upheaval, revolution, and another, even greater, world war. Yet it also gave rise to hope. New movements for independence, for rights, for change. Out of the mud and blood of the Great War, the modern world was born. World War I. Tragedy, adventure, and a warning. A story that continues to echo through history, reminding us of the cost of war and the fragile value of peace.